Silence flattens everything around you. If you raise your voice, you raise the awareness of people around you and you raise others. Silence can be a tool, but not in this situation. You know, I grew up in an area called Hawai'i, and there's nothing wrong with that name, but it's a development name. It came from a developer. If we change a name in our genealogy, we change our history. If we change a name of a land name, we change its history. And sometimes that's purposeful because it's easier to bulldoze in concrete when you do that over a new name. I mean, when you say Mauna Lua, the moment that word leaves your mouth, that breath ties with 1,000 years of people who came before you who said that word. You're a part of that narrative. E ku'u home o Mauna Lua, e ku'u home o nā kupuna, mai uka ai kai, he walina mau o Mauna Lua ia'u, e ku'u home o Mauna Lua, e ku'u home o nā kupuna. With Hawai'i, development. Mauna Lua, a cultural name. Hawai'i, a name that goes back maybe 60 years. Mauna Lua, a name that goes back over 1,000 years. And they tell very different stories, don't they? Hawai'i, the building on the land. Mauna Lua, the story of the land. I forgot who said it first, but we die two deaths. We die our physical death. Then it's the death when people forget who we are. They forget our name. I mean, our kupuna live on because we say their names. I always think it's like the radio. Our kupuna on a radio station that's 24/7. We're just not tuned into it yet. And we start tuning in, then you get the whole, breakdown of, oh my gosh, there's so much here to do. And you can't stand on the sidelines.
The Kupau family home was in Kalihi on Rose Street.
I can't say I know where it started. I mean, there's definitely seeds that were planted. I was extremely close to my grandma Kupau, and she would tell me all kinds of stories of, when life was in Kalihi when my mom and my aunties and uncles were young, and I love those stories. I always say I don't remember the specifics, but it's the way she made me feel. When I was a young girl, she gave me my grandfather's military ID tags, dog tags. He died the year I was born. And all these years later, I did a film on him. And that seed was planted by my grandmother when I was a young teenager.
Most of the dancers came from, my Auntie Leilani, my Auntie Punani, Auntie Maikia'u, Kent Gerard, some of the old-time, kumuhula.
No, I think kupuna plant things for us, right? They put things around us, and they never make us choose. They give us a choice, because that's my agency. What am I going to do with that information?
When we finally reached the road into Waipio Valley, Tutu insisted we walk down. Everyone had trouble keeping up with her, including her son, Yama.
Wow.
Someone asked me once, how did I know to do the Tutu Ruth story? Because I was actually looking at a story on pig hunting, and there was a picture of her on the wall in her son's house. It was this big photo, and I looked, and I felt like I got hit in my stomach, and I said, who is that? And he said, that's my mom. And the next weekend, it was on Hawai'i Island.
Don't you know that picture in the picture?
But don't look like you. Hey, you look kind of sexy in this picture.
Me? When you look at it, you're the Queen of Spain.
You're like Queen of Waipio Valley.
I think Hawaii, it's such a beautiful and special and magical place to live, and it's also very challenging when you start talking about issues of how we identify ourselves and the spaces that we hold in community. And so many of us are mixed race, so how do we honor those different sides of who we are? I'm Hawaiian Irish Scotch. Tutu Ruth is Japanese Hawaiian. And she embraced being she loved being Japanese, right? She could balance that. And I thought to myself, you know, sometimes we're fighting with who we are and where we fit in here. And it was the beginning of the settling in my mind of, I just need to be who I am and tell the stories that I need to tell.
I was wondering why you still have to work so hard.
My children all got married, and then my husband died. Nobody is going to put the food in your mouth. We have to work.
These two kupuna, Tutu Ruth and Homelani, my grandfather, Oliver Kupau, very two different Hawaiian. Tutu Ruth was the story of a woman, but the story of a woman struggling to make ends meet and to raise children. Both of them, they're political films. Tutu Ruth, you can say, what happened to Hawaiian women? You know, what happened to land? What happened to space that was Hawaiian? My grandfather, what happened on Oahu? What about the military coming to Hawaii? What about Hawaiian men joining the military? What happened to families? Why don't we speak our Hawaiian language anymore? There's no denying there is injustice, and that injustice continues today. You're not responsible for the past, but you have a responsibility to know the past. And also to understand a simple story can be very hard to tell. But in that simpleness, it just roots out. I saw this poem, I'm like, oh my God, that's just like my work. In fact, I have it taped up in front of my editor on the wall. Even the small poems mean something. They're often whales in the bodies of tiny fish. And that's kind of what guides me, those whales in those tiny fish. Because the big fish are always going to catch your eye, right? And they're always going to be seen. But those small fish have something powerful within them.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is it.
I've tried to celebrate the things that I can in my culture, in Hawaiian culture. I don't want to intimidate my audience. I want them to step through the door with me on this journey. And for myself, you know, Anne-Marie Kirk is not the most native Hawaiian name, but I love that name. It reflects my parents and that genealogy. And then my middle name is Nalani, and I thought, perfect. It's at the heart of my name. It's at the center of who I am. If I stay true to the girl who was told that stories by my grandmother in Kalihi, my father growing up in the Bronx, and what that experience was like. Stay true to the story, and when they trust us, they reveal themselves. And in that becomes the gift of revealing who you are as a person, because what has touched you, that is what's going to guide you, and that's how I've worked. Trust yourself, do the work, and fail, and then rise up, and then fail, and then rise up. That's the process. It's like the ocean tide, you know, it comes and goes, but the waves continue to shore. We just got to tell our stories.